guys, which you can use to copy paste the starter code if you were not present in the previous session. So this is what we did. Okay, sorry, I am pasted. Okay. So for people who have not actually attended, please go through this starter code and set it up. For people who have already done, can you tell me now when we click on the submit button or this confirm booking, what happens? We submitted on something different happened, right? Like visually, we haven't yet sent that data that we have collected to send to a server, but something visually happened which was visible, right? Like what actually happened? You can try it out now and see me. What visual differences did you see? Not really. We did not validate up, like we haven't validated on that data. I want you guys to answer that. What visual difference did you see when you clicked on that submit button? Exactly, Biswajit. Right. It changed the URL, right? Well, we haven't yet sent that data to the server, but the default way in which it was handled was we got all those values appended to that URL, right? And also, if you try it out right now also, a refresh happened, like a reload happened, right? So, okay, sorry. If you say, did the UI change? Yes. Yes. So what the UI changed? Whatever data that we have filled in, right? All the values got emptied when you submitted on the data. And also the link in the upper, like all this link part that you see, right? That got changed and we got appended to the data got appended to that URL. Sorry. Along with that, the page URL changed, right? Okay. Okay, now what we understood from the default way of submitting, right? When we attach submit onto this button and we click on the submit button, the form gets submitted. On submitting, you will find that initially the page got refreshed and there is a reload that's happening and all the data values that you have entered is no longer there present. Like if you have written in the name, let's say Alicia, I have written and I submitted with all the other details, then the data field got emptied, right? And there's one thing that you noticed in the URL, like whatever the data we have given, then that got attached to this URL with query parameters. Or let's say if we have used full name, we have full name equals to Vivek Nikam. And email, we have some email that we have entered. And for drop down fields, like for let's say the doctor, we have selected Maya. I hope it's visible, like this red color mark you can see, right? So this is the default way of handling a form. Now, okay. Now I want you to give an activity and I want you to spot the difference, okay? Okay, can you say that when I will enter the email and password and submit form, what is wrong? Can you spot any privacy issues that if I write the email and password and submit the form, is there something noticeable that that can be a privacy concern? Yes, exactly. Everything is exposed. Yes, let's not go into the great detail of CSRF tokens, but then exactly, Shubhranil. As you can see, here we have the password exposed, guys. And like assume if you are entering your email and password and someone is next to you, and when you submit, that password will be visible to the next person, which you don't want, right? So what actually happens, that password will be appended to that URL as query param, and it will be visible. Like when we would have typed out password, it would have showed ... like only ... right? But then when we would submit the button, it got appended to that URL, and that URL, the password is exposed, and it's a real privacy concern. Right? We don't want our passwords to get exposed, right? So let's look at a better way to send that data. Uh, okay. So how are we listening to actions like click and input? Can anyone see that? How do we actually listen? Exactly. And event listener. Exactly. So what we do, we attach event listeners and we check on that event. And when that event is getting triggered or is getting fired, we do something, right? Like we had click and input. Now, similarly, what we do, submit is another event, right? So what actually happens when we want, what essentially we would do, we would fetch, we'll get that form, like we have uh, and like we have wrapped every element or the input elements inside a form, right? If you remember, now we would get that form and we would attach an event listener to this form that when you get submit, do this. And in that callback function, we essentially write code which we want to get executed after the user has submitted, right? Exactly, sure. Okay. Let's go into our code sandbox and let me show you how to do that. I hope everyone is ready with their code sandboxes. Okay, cool. So we had this confirm booking. Let me, okay, this is not being, okay. So we had index.js. I hope I have named it. Cool. Just print it out. Console.log. This is the booking. Am I doing booking? Yes. Cool. Okay, it's working. So, okay, let's code it out. So what we would do, okay, give me a second, guys. So we would attach this. So we have this ID assigned to this form, right? So what we will essentially do, let me, okay. Const form, we had document dot get element by ID. What was the ID? We had booking form. Now, once we get the booking form, we would like to add an event listener. So I have added an event listener saying that when you submit this form, you would be executing this callback function. Now, what this callback function says, right now, let's keep it simple and say that user data got submitted. Okay. Submitted. Okay. Let's save it and refresh it. Now I am writing Alicia @gmail.com. I'm adding Dr. Google Meet, some date. And okay, I haven't added the submit button. Is it? Okay, sorry. Ensure that whatever you have written wraps inside the form. Okay. So some folk have like, it might happen that you might have created double forms which won't work exactly. So confirm booking, and let's give it a class of BTN and BTN primary. And so, give me a second, there is a live case. Yeah. And we will write type equals to. So, okay. Let's just save it for now. Refresh it once again. I have my name, Alicia. I have the email as alicia@gmail.com. And I am selecting John Hopkins. Data some. Okay. See. Can you see? Could you see that? Like first it got, we got console, but then it got refreshed, and whatever I wrote did not work. Guys, +1 in the chat if you notice that what right now happened. Actually, we would prefer button. There are other reasons that we, instead of using input type equals to button, we use button because that helps in like, there are other advantages. I would not go into detail, but there are SEO optimizations, and then it's, syntactically also makes sense. So please use, whenever you are using any buttons, try to use button instead of input type equals to button. Yeah. Okay, +1. You notice that, right? So what actually happened? It console logged, it executed that chunk of code, but then it reloaded that page. And we had this, all this data got appended to that URL. Okay. Let me present again. That happened, right? I hope everyone noticed that. But still, that does not solve the privacy issue, did it? Because earlier, if you saw in that URL itself, like when I submitted, this data got appended. Let's say if I had any password written, it would have appended that password itself. So it did not solve the privacy concern. Now, how do we solve? Sorry. Okay. That did not solve the privacy concern, right? So what essentially could have happened? Give me a second, guys. So how could we do that? How could we prevent the default behavior? We can do that by using something called as, okay, just giving you a slight disclaimer. Sorry. We can stop the default behaviors. Okay. There are not only this form has default behavior, we have different other default behavior as well. In form, we have this reload data that happened, like we similarly have for input type equals to text and checkboxes. We could prevent this default behavior where all the data got appended and the page reloaded by using called as event.preventDefault function. Now what it does, this default behavior of, let's say here we are using form, so we're concerned with the reload and the add form data. So what would happen, this data won't get appended, neither the page would refresh. Now let me quickly demonstrate that for you. So if I would write inside here that E dot. So here that earlier that you said E, right? So what E is this event. So if I would write event, it would write event, okay? So don't get confused at why I'm using E and there it is short event, right? So it's the event param. I would write prevent default, okay? Now when I wrote prevent default, let me quickly refresh and show you what actually happened. If I would write prevent default and select like as earlier as I did, and okay, did I not save that? Okay, sorry. That already got appended. Okay. So we have this data. Now I am writing alicia@gmail.com, and I'm filling all this data, right? Now when I would select and confirm the booking, you could see that whatever was happening earlier, the page getting reloaded, the data getting appended to that URL, it's no longer happening. And only whatever we have written, like this console log for now, it only got printed, right? So what event.prevent default did, it stopped the default functionality of the submit, which was to append into
Guess let's close your connection. Just please do hang around. Folks, Alicia had an internet issue joining back.
I'm really sorry, guys. There's some network issue that happened. Okay. Give me a second too. Okay. Give me a minute, guys. I'm quickly setting up again. Okay. I don't think the setup's gonna work anyway. Okay. Let's continue. Give me, guys. My setup.
In the meantime, do you want me to share the next activity with them?
Yeah, that would be great. Can you do that? I am having some issues. Yeah.
Folks, this is the sort of where we just Rishabh just help you folks walk through event default and submit event handlers, right? So do get started with this activity. I'll give a quick context on the activity. What you'll have to do is do stick around with the doctor appointment application you had, which Alicia shared the starter code just in case you didn't have from previous session. The idea here is you should add a event handler, which when the form gets submitted, it should log the patient's email to the console. So you had a patient's email and full name field. You need to log the value when the form gets submitted. And one thing to note there is the submit form submission shouldn't result in the URL showing up on the form data. Do try it out. Let me know if you need any clarity on the requirements, right? So otherwise, folks, do try it out. Anyone needing the starter code? You don't have it from previous session? Do let me know. Should I repeat, or all of you are good to get started with the activity? I hope all of you are busy working on it, right? So do let me know just in case anyone need more clarity.
Okay. Okay, let me share the start of Yeah, thanks, Logan, for sharing. Yes, prevent default as an inbuilt function.
Alicia, you will be sharing, right? You are not sharing.
Yeah, I'm sharing.
For sure.
Is my screen up, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for jumping in and helping me. So, yeah. So we'll be doing on an activity where on form submit you console of the patient's email. And no, that's a way. Okay, wait. Am I living? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Guys, are you done with your news? You can paste in your code in the chat as well. It's a small code, right? You can solve log with missions command. Yeah. Guys, are you done? +1 in the chat if anyone has done it. This event propagation and event logging. That's not actually covered in this today's session. Can we shift that to the later part of the session? Yes, sometimes. Yeah. Please do on this activity. If anyone has done it, can you share this slide? Sorry? You want me to share what? Yeah, Nabhan has already shared the code, right? You just need to print. Okay, slide link, yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, let me come. It's not. But let me get started. Let's not read more. So what essentially I wanted you to write, right? So instead here, what you would do, you would write code, sorry, print, or let's say get the email input and console.log. Does that make sense, guys? You know, right, how to get the input email. You can get it from the ID, and then you just need to console.log. Yeah. Guys, any difficulty in understanding the question per se? The question got clear, right? Last one in the chat if the question was clear and you were working on it. Okay, Mohit, did you solve it? Shubhrani, you can write the code, right? Like just two liners. Or this function, entire function code you can send me in the chat window. Okay, Mohit. Yes, but we haven't covered that elements part. Can you get that by using element by ID? Yeah, that's actually what we will be covering next, Mohit, the code you have shared. But then right now you just need to get it by using element ID because we haven't covered that yet, right? I'm glad you're +1, like one step ahead. I really appreciate that. Okay. But guys, for people, you can get. Let me write that for you. We have ending first. Right. Okay. I hope this is what people have followed. You just need to get that email and prevent that default functionality by calling on event.prevent default. You just need to get the email input, which you can get it by the ID itself, right? And then console log it. Quick, simple. Last one in the chat if you get it. We'll move further. Vishwapriya, Subdhini, did you get it? Akshay? Okay. Okay. We are done. Okay, someone pasted. Yes, we can do that. Date. Gotcha. Yeah. Now I have a curious question for you, right? So we know that we could also, instead of submit, we could have also used click event for this form submit, but we did not. Like we have used type equals to submit, right? Like if we would have used click event, what would have been an added disadvantage? Does anyone know? Sorry. Sorry. Does anyone know? One more transition. Yeah. My double screen got cancelled out, so I could not read only query if you have. Okay, is clicking the submit button the only way to submit a form? It isn't, right? We can attach a click and but there are other disadvantages, right? So click can't catch events in the form of submitted with enter. Now what does that mean? Like when you try to submit a form, more of time what we actually do, instead of going to the submit button and press it, we also like to submit the entire form by using enter, right? When we would use type equals to click, or let's say we would have attached an on-click event to it, and we would have written all this logic in that click event, then we could not have submitted if we have entered the enter button. Does that make sense? So it gives us an added privilege of submitting the entire data by just clicking on this enter button in our keyboard. Okay, moving on. We can let's talk about how we can retrieve the form data. Now we had this form, and we wanted to take all the input that user has written. Like we had this name, we had this email, we had the doctor's data, like which doctor we want to do, details about where we want to conduct the meet. Is it in Google Meet or normal call? So how can we get that? So we have this myform.elements, which we like where we would pass inside the square brackets, this red square brackets, right? Inside that we would write the name or ID. For example, here, in order to get the full name, what I would do, I would write myform.elements, full name inside, quotes, dot value. Here, in this example, we have taken email. So in order to get whatever the user has input in this input field, which has this name attribute of email, we could write myform.elements email.value. Now, how is that different from what we did? Now, earlier, we tried to fetch that values from by getting this ID, right? For which, we use this get element by ID, that ID value. But instead of that, which we actually do in reality, is attach this form.elements.value, and whatever input we have written, you can get that from form.elements with this ID or name attribute given to it. Does that make sense, guys? See, if you compare both of this screenshots or say code, in the left-hand side, you would see we have this full name where we get it from form.elements and full name dot value, whereas in the right-hand side, we are similarly using document.getElement ID. And similarly, we are doing it. So if I am going to rewrite the code that I have written, okay, I have lost my, okay, give me a second. Where did I? Oh, yes, I'm lost again. Yeah. Sorry for that, guys. So here, what we did, here we had gotten this email from document.getElement by ID, right? So instead that what we could have done, we could have written, let me comment that out here. Last email input equals to form.elements form.elements, whatever ID we have passed, right? We have passed name dot value. So here instead of adding value, we can write name. Let me have this here. So here, if I write Anisha and I'm only using that email, right? I'm fetching that console logging the email. What I would see? Anisha@gmail.com. But here I have not used document.getID. I have gotten that value that user has input by using form, which is like, how did we get the form? Form, we fetched it from getElement by ID. So from that form, we got all the elements, all the inputs that are child of that form element, right? So form.elements, email, whatever the ID or name attribute assigned to that input element. Then we got that value. So by writing form.elements email.value, we get that email input. Similarly, we could have done for const full name elements equals name of full name. We can check that. I'm writing some jargon values. Just can you get it? See, I got name as STH and whatever data I have. I hope that makes sense. So we have an activity for you guys. So what you need to do, you need to print all the data that we have entered, create an object data, and write the data in this format. I'm sharing this format in the chat window itself. So what you need to do, when you enter all this data, you then console log all the data object in this format. Can you do that, guys? +1 in the chat if you think you can do it. And I hope it's doable, guys. +1, great. I'll give you 2 minutes to do this. Once you do that, please share your code or give me the code sandbox. Everyone able to complete it? Please paste in your code, guys. If you're not able to complete it, please write 0 so that I'll explain you the problems again. Yes, can you paste in your code? Mohit, did you do it? Anurag, Vishwapriya, it's quite simple, right? The question is clear. If you don't understand the question, zero in the chat. I'll explain the question to you. Not issues. What was the issue, Anurag? Okay, the activity is what you need to do. The data that we had taking from the form, right? You just need to console log the data. That's it. In this data format that I have pasted out. Okay, let me do that. It's not. Okay, so what here we are already taking this email input and full name. What we will be doing in index.js, be getting all the other data. Now, how to get that other data? Const. What data we had? We had doctor. You can, okay, let's not create another. We can have this const data equals to. The format was full name first. So we would write full name. Guys, are you done? Shall I show you the output, right? Last one in the chat if you want me to show the output right now. Okay. Cool. Let me do that for you guys. Full name. So we had mail as mail info. Doctor as for elements. Form dot elements dot inside the doctors, right? We have doctor, then we had location form dot form dot elements location dot value and date has to be. So let me create. Let's not create here. Const date equals to. How do we create a new date? We would use the constructor date. Inside that, let's pass whatever we had, which was form dot elements date dot value. In this date object is what we pass. Oh, instead of console level, simply. Hey, that's great. Shantinu. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. Let me complete it. Date. Okay. Let's not date is okay. Okay. instead of printing this, let me can save it. I'll show you. I'll quickly check also for people who have pasted their code inside. Chat room. I'll just identify it. Okay. Okay, check if I have assigned all this. Location. ID. Okay. Name we have. Okay. Let's do this location. Let's make everything as location. What is it? Doctor. It essentially know what it is. Did we have date? Date? We did. Name equals to doctor. I did not have name equals to doctor. Yeah, we did, right? Essentially, we should not be getting this. Okay, wait. Did I? This is the same. Let's close. Okay, sorry. Thanks, my mistake. Refresh the page. What's your Cool. I hope everyone got that. This is working. I hope everyone understood that. Let me quickly check people who have pasted their window. Okay. Okay. Let's, guys, you can do this next activity. In the meantime, I'll be checking on code. So what this next activity says, so in this next activity, you need to implement a function called as make request, which will take the data. Now, what's the data? The data is the object that you have currently created, which has all the input values that the user has made. You need to like create a post method. Like you need to call the post method and pass this sorry, you need to okay, I'm stammering, sorry. So you need to send a post request to this URL. With URL, I'll be pasting this URL for you. You need to like just ensuring that the request body should have the data as an argument. I hope people are familiar how to send a post request to an API endpoint. I'll show if you are not comfortable in that, but I hope you do know that. After getting all those data, after sending that post data, you will be getting a response. You have to do all these functionalities within the submit event handler itself. Because after you submit the data, right, when you click on the submit button, all the data that you have gotten from that input field, get it, declare inside the data, send a post request to this endpoint by calling make request data. You can also verify that if the functionality, like you have made an endpoint request by checking on the network tab of your browser. Okay. Okay. So I hope people got this stuff right. Is the question still visible? +1 in the chat if the question is visible. I'm actually paused the machine. And let me check through the code that you have given me. Okay.
Alisha, I guess it will be helpful to share the URL. They don't have.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm sending that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, great, Shantanu. Can you? Okay, this is the make request. Yeah, that's good. Do the request. Makes sense. Yeah. Plus one in the chat. When you are done, Shantanu has done it. Did anyone else complete it? I'll wait for a few more minutes. Then we can proceed. Okay. So let's continue. I hope my screen is visible now. So the task was to make request function, which will take all the data and send a post request to this endpoint, right? So let's do that. Oh, sorry. First, make request.
Alisha, we can't see your screen. Can you try stop sharing and doing it? You can see your.
Not visible. Okay. Is it better?
Not really. It's showing started screen sharing, but not your screen.
It's it's still the same issue.
Can you try rejoining?
Yeah, I'll rejoin.
Okay, sorry folks. Please do give her a minute.
Is the screen up?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. It's up for everyone, guys. +1 if it's up for everyone. Okay. So I'm declaring a make request function, which would take a post object, right? So it would take the post object data. It should be an async function. So what this async function would do, let's make it data, okay? So when I would take the data, I would let me declare the URL here, which was, okay. Now I am returning the promise that I got it after fetching this URL. Now I hope you will have been familiar of what I have been doing. So since I'm sending a request to this API endpoint, which is a post request, I'm declaring the body as the data that we have sent, but essentially you would stringify the body. We would understand more of stringifying during when we would discuss about the local storage part. So hopefully you'll get cleared out then. It's data. Not using data. So yeah. Then we have the headers. We have the content. Content attribute, application, JSON, and parasite. So this is something that you can remember for right now because it's how we send data, right? How it's speaking. Okay. Then after declaring the headers, I am calling a event to get the response, and then response dot JSON. So make request. I need to, instead of console login, I make request and the data that I have sent in, and then I would say to whatever response I am getting, please console log. I hope it makes sense. Let me see. Refresh the page. Checking up. Okay. My voice is audible. Yeah. Oh. This later object you could see we were importing this ID 10, right? So this is the response that we got after sending and post request to this API endpoint. Now, checking what we did. So if you check on the network tab, we have sent a post request to this endpoint. 201 means it got created, right? A new data got created, so it's sending us a state, sending us a response of with a status code of 201. So this is the data that we have sent. This is the request payload, right? The data that we have sent. Now what we did get, we got this as a response with an ID, right? That's what got console log. Yeah, I hope that's clear. Will it be visible when we search through URL using query? Where do you want to search? You want to search. See, since we send it as a post request, right? So anything data that we have sent is not appended to that URL. So it won't be available. See, if you check, it got, see, there is this endpoint, right? When we post endpoint is there, we are sending in the body instead of appending into the URL itself. So, yeah. I'm not sure if this is what you have been asking. Is that what you are asking, Mohit? Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, I don't think they are like exposing whatever post data that we have created using here. That's why it's just how they are handling the JSON placeholder. They are not exposing the data that we have added to that. That's why we are not able to see 101. But yeah, that the data got created. Like all the data that we have sent got successfully handled by the server. And that's why we are getting that ID 101. Yeah. So, okay. Let's continue. I hope everyone is clear. +1 in the chat if we should proceed further. Okay. Now, what are the takeaways? Until now, what did we study? So by default, we knew that when we are submitting a form, right, it get reloaded, and then whatever data we were sending, it got appended into that URL. But we could stop this default behavior by using event.prevent default. We can use the submit event handler. There are multiple ways in which we could handle on button click, right? But essentially we would use submit because there are multiple reasons. One was like when you would enter, it got submit, right? That was one of the main reasons that we use type equals to submit, and like on click won't have this default behavior of submitting the data. So that's why we use submit. Yes, we understood about this, how to stop this prevent default behavior by using this. We need to call this prevent default inside our callback to prevent what is the default behavior which the form was doing, right? Like appending the data to the URL along with reloading the page. Now we can essentially get all the data that user has inputted, that user has given us through this input. How we could do that, we would call on myForm.elements. MyForm is like, here MyForm is like the form which we have selected by using document select by ID, right? Get element by ID, like document.get element by ID, where we have passed the name or the ID, and then we get the value by writing dot value. I hope that's clear. Let's continue with the form validation. Okay, let me quickly check if you have any doubts. Okay. Do you have any doubts, guys? Please see that in the chat. If you are fine, +1 in the chat, we can continue further. If it's okay. We can have some water. Okay. Let's continue the discussion. So now now why do we require form validation, and what essentially is form validation? Now, when we write any input, right, in order to make sure that whatever values we are asking, it matches with the proper format, and we are not sending some jargon data. Like, let's say a user can send any jargon data instead of phone number, they could send an email address. We need to check that whatever we are asking is valid, right? So that's why we do form validation on our input elements before actually we send it to a server. Now, validation, it prevents the default, like if you send some jargon values or some absurd values to the database, then it might throw an error if it has not been properly handled at the backend itself. So instead of going through all this trouble of checking at the server end, we need to ensure that whatever the user has entered through input fields from the browser is what is in proper format. Like email has this @ sign, or the number is some let's say 10-digit number, so etc. Like it depends on whatever fields we are asking, right? So before we actually send that to the server, we need to add this validation where we ensure that whatever value that the user is actually we are asking and the user is entering matches. Essentially, we would not like to send the data if the user is not writing proper format. We would make sure that we show some in different ways how that the user has written some wrong data. Let's say that instead of writing 10-digit number, the user has entered only 4-digit, which is essentially wrong, right? So you would as you can see in this example, we could show them with as a user-friendly way of how we can user-friendly way of telling them that, okay, whatever data you are entering is not right. You need to enter valid data. Now, how can we do that? We could do that by using HTML built-in form validation features and using JavaScript. Now, what are the different HTML built-in form validation? We would discuss that later. I hope this slide is clear. It's okay, right? Shall I move further? +1 in the chat. Can guys +1 if you want me to move further. I hope this part got clear, right? Why do we need validation? Cool. So, okay, so we have this field called as required. Now, when we would write required inside an input tag, what it would do, it would make that field compulsory. So the form could not be submitted if the user has not entered that value. Okay. So it makes that field mandatory. And if we try to submit the form without actually entering, it would show some popover, like this type of message, right? Please fill in this field. So required is one attribute which we can do. We have another attribute called disabled. Now, if we want certain fields to not get, activated at some point, or let's say we don't want user to input that data for some time being, or let's say we don't actually want it, then we can use this disabled inside that input field. So how is that different? Now, in the left-hand side, as you can see, this login is disabled, which would, like, if we would hover on that button, it would not allow us to click it. And in the right-hand side is how it's showed when we allow them to click, right? Now, this were two of these important ways in which we can add validation using HTML. But it's not enough, right? Because we would want a lot more functionality. Like, let's say we want to check that whatever password that we are writing is right. But since we cannot view it, so we have an additional field called as password confirmation, where we ensure that whatever the user has written in the password, it's written in the same way. But we can't check two different fields that whatever, like we want to do some check operation that whatever the new password is written and whatever the password confirmation is written, both are same. Now, we cannot do that using only HTML. We need to use JavaScript, right? So this is an essentially use case where we would use JavaScript to check that whatever is, in this example, the password matches with the confirmation password. Now, how we could do that? Okay, let me quickly demonstrate you this input disabled and input required. So let's make, okay. We could write this name as required. Now, if I write required, I could not submit. If I cancel out and try to canceling on this request, just to show that, simple. Okay, yeah. Good. Gotcha. Right now I can. Okay, let it be right now because I don't want to cancel out on that. Just I'll quickly demonstrate it. Like I'm not entering the email, I'm entering every other field. Oh my God. Do not save it. So, okay, I wrote label as required instead of input. So ensure that you are writing required in the input itself, or else you won't get something as you are or as desired. Okay. Just give it a small demonstration. So see, you could see that, right? This has this popover that's coming that, okay, you cannot submit. And also this functionality, like the submit, even if I clicked it, it did not execute anything, right? So that's essentially how things would behave if you would write required. Moving on. I was telling you about focus and blur. So similarly, the way we had like input, click, submit events, we have focus and blur events. Now, what focus and blur events when added to input element does? Now, when you see this full name, I have not clicked on it. It would be something like this first, as you can see, right? No blue mark. But when you when I would like click on this full name, like input to write something, one event is triggered called as focus. Now, whenever we try to write something inside that field, an event is triggered called as focus. Similarly, if I would go out of scope of that full name and I would enter, let's say, clicked on some other window, or let's say wrote some other input field and the scope, like the cursor is not inside that full name, it would trigger another event called as the blur event. In this example, as you can see, it blurred out of from the full name, and in the email, the focus, like it went on focus, right? So how do we essentially do that? You would add an event listener saying focus, and we can console log or do whatever we want to do by writing our code inside this callback handler. Okay. Essentially similar to focus, we have blur. So we would write element.add event listener, and instead of focus, we are writing blur, like the event name, right? Which in this case is blur and focus. Now there's an activity, guys. Now what you need to do, you need to write a function called as invalid name, which you take a parameter called as name, and whatever name it is taking, it would check that if the argument passed is an invalid. Now, what is an invalid name? These are the different types of different invalid names. So whatever input you are taking, check that the input is not equal to this values that is present inside this array of invalid names. Okay. So we have Winter Soldier, Iron Man, Black Widow, and Loki. All these will be invalid, and you need to check true, like you need to return true for this invalid name if whatever input we have given is not any of these. Else it would return false, right? I hope that question. And if it's same, like if it's an invalid name, you want to alert saying that if like, hey, consulting feature for superheroes are not available yet. Thanks for understanding. So let me paste this invalid names value to you. Okay, yeah, I'm pasting the link. This is the invalid name, and okay, so this is a. Do we have alert message? Okay, please write this alert. I'm writing the alert message. Okay, this would be the alert message. So what you need to do, you need to write a function is invalid name, and I hope the question got clear, right? +1 in the chat if you understood the question. Anyone who did not understand the question, 0 in the chat. I have pasted these invalid names. And what is the alert message I want to show? Also try to incorporate blur on purpose. It's your call that which event you want to trigger. Cool. Guys, did anyone do it? So do you want me to start coding or you want me to wait for some time? Okay, yeah, sure. I hope this question is clear. Okay. Should we make list of something? Oh, cool, cool. Absolutely. Great, Shubham. Right. Anyone, did anyone try it out? Did anyone else try it out? Almost, yeah. Anurag, is it done? Shall I start coding, guys? Okay. Yeah. Can you share your code, Anurag? Or you can share it. One second. No problem. Cool. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Guys, let me do that. Let me write that and send booking as well. Cool. So what we wanted to do, we need to declare a function called as is invalid. Did anyone paste? No, it's fine. Is invalid. Function name is invalid, which take in a name. I'm trying to do in a very little different way, but essentially what we did also will work. So we had variables called as invalid names, right? So invalid names, which was essentially this. So how if I take, so I would Okay. Past. You can check if much equals to. I need to check. I need to get that input variable, right? So how did I get that? I got that as a param from me. So I would call on, let's say, I need to pass, like, okay, I can, is invalid. Okay, invalid means I can find it, right? So I would find in that array that whatever I have passed, what is the past, whatever I have passed is the name. This is another function, right? We check that if this function would return me if it's seen, making sure that whatever I give in is already in lowercase. I'll convert that the lowercase of that name that I have entered and would convert the fake name as well, which here in this case would be the name. Oh, okay, this is kind of confusing. Let me do I know. Dot root lowercase, right? You cannot format it. Format. Yeah. I hope that does not confuse it. Now, if it's true, now we need to check if is not if is match equals to null. Match होगा, then it's false, right? False. So it's an invalid null. Does that make sense? Okay. So it would check invalid nulls. Okay. So there's something wrong. So, okay. So that. I hope that makes sense. This is some code that someone can like used it. You can use it as well. Just make little things simple. Okay. You can use that as well, but yeah, just trying to have a fancy way to write it. So it would essentially check on find method and it would convert into lowercase so that even if we write small w, it like does not give us absurd output that okay wi. This is wrong. Okay. So making every case like if you are comparing or if you are checking for something in an array, try to convert into a generic form, mostly lowercase or like uppercase, so that the comparison becomes easy. Okay. Cool. I hope everyone got it. Let's move on to. I hope everyone understood that part. Now, when we would like to submit, like when we would like to validate our form, right? So submit event is another way to form validation. So what actually happens, inside this callback handler, when we are trying to submit our data to, let's say, the server, before actually submit, we should validate on the data that whatever input we are getting, and we check on every input element that we have, right? We put on different functionalities, like you try to segregate the check condition where we would essentially check for email, let's say number, and we would call all those validation function inside that submit. I hope that makes sense, guys. So where we could check, we would write the check code inside the submit as well. Before we actually send our data to the server, we would call on this check conditions and check that whatever input that user has sent in is right. So let's do another activity. So in this activity, we will be completing the submit handler. Now, what we would do, we would check like whatever the data, like we are sending the full name, which we are getting from the input is invalid name or not. If it is invalid, then it would show us an alert message. And if it is not, then it would, show us an alert that, okay, whatever data you have entered is not right. Does that make sense? Also, we can check it. Not really. We just need to check that whatever value the user is entering is inside that array, which is the invalid names. So if it is an invalid name, then we would show an alert. If it is like equal to, right? If the name that we are entering is same as the invalid name which is present inside that array, we would show an alert. If it is not, then we would allow to submit the data. Does that make sense? Can you guys do it? Okay. Nabin, it's can we give it as a take home?
Yeah,
What do you think?
yeah. Anurag, what do you want to do it as a take home? If it's because we don't get time to cover local storage, we'll plan for it. Don't worry. I'll probably once we wrap this up, we can discuss. Do try it out in the sessions.
Okay, guys, I'll give you 2-3 minutes more. For essentially 4 minutes to complete this exercise. I hope everyone got it. Now, what this exercise's aim was to do that whenever whenever you enter that data and you click on submit, the data before data is sent to the server, you would essentially check if the the full name is valid or not. Okay. If it is invalid, then show the alert. You can write the code inside the submit, or else you can create another event like we discussed about blur event, right? So whenever you would blur out, it will show an alert. Or else you can write that in the submit itself. So before submitting, it would check that the data does not contain, is not present inside this, the value that the user has written, right? So it's essentially not an invalid name, and the invalid names I have already given you this array. Yeah, sure. Mhm. Guys, you understand this activity, right? Did anyone do it? Mohit, Subramanian, Biswajit, Anurag. Did any of you guys did it? Akshay? Okay. That's cool. You are adding that inside the summit. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. You could have actually this exercise is more about like when we're checking on the need. So for right now, you don't need to concentrate on valid email and date and all. But that's a good thing that you are doing, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. So first, since someone did inside, okay. 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 Can do something. Okay. Since someone did it inside Submit, let me use it the on blur function, blur one, like blur event. So first, I would like to get the full name and check. Like if I am not writing inside Submit, how would I write it? Let me do that. Okay. Okay, we can do that. Okay, here I'm consoling data. We have got the full name, right? So we need to check that. Our function name is invalid name. So we would check that is invalid name. Or we pass in the full name, right? Is valid. Is if if is name valid, is name valid, is name valid, not if that means it is not valid, then we would allow it in the sentence that I have pasted. Yeah. So so what I am doing is checking alert, right? Yeah, we could make a question. Like essentially, we would not do it inside if as we would like have multiple cases and we would call it right. But since we let's just call it not it. Like if it's right, it would. I hope. Let me double check the code. This one valid. Okay. And it is going to. And we will declare as a it's a valid number, so it should console. Yeah, it showed it's a valid name. Okay. It should not be okay. I guess I did handle it in a way. Give me a check. So let me console as much. As much. This is as much. So I guess this should not be, if it is not equals to true, this should be true, this should be false, right? So let me just check it. If it's given me. If it's not valid, if it's invalid, then only not available yet. Yeah. Okay, it's different. Written define. Let's define or find it should not be. And thus it should work. They're equal here. Can anyone figure out what did I do wrong if I'm missing out? So I'm checking on invalid names, finding I name, checking, getting all these values, right? I'm checking that name that I have written. Is match. Yes, it should not return undefined, right? Okay, right now, let's what we can do. Instead of using, this should work though. This is coming as undefined, which should be invalid means not found. Okay. Let me quickly check. Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay. I'll check that out. I'll post you what caused wrong. Let's not work on this thing. We can use this sample code with someone used it. We can use for loop, right? We just need to check that if we got valid name. If it is an invalid name, we need to return it's true. Or else it will return false. Right now. We are not checking only conditions. We can check the filter. So, okay. Seems like we do have a lot more thoughts. Okay. Seems like it kind of. Okay. Yeah. It's fixed. It's an invalid name. We're going to return to good. Because this is an invalid name. What else? You return once. Still this color is similar. I'm not sure why. Okay, I'm missing out another value basis. Is it so? Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Let me write iron now. Cool. It's working. If I write anything else on that is also what should. Okay, there's some bug that I need to connect. Okay. I guess we might need another session for that. Okay, I'll fix this. There is some issues that coming up, but I hope. Yeah. Okay. This is not an invalid name. This data already registered from server. No, we are not sending the request. I have commented out, right? I have commented out this make request. So it's just consuming the data. The data is fine. What is it's giving me false for this. If I write iron man, it's also giving me false. So whatever I write, what is full name, it is giving me iron man. Okay. So I'm calling an invalid name. I'm checking that if name is anyhow equal to Winter Soldier Iron Man. If it is, it should return me true. So let me console log here. It should return me. Let's see. Am I not following that? This invalid name. sure that's okay. Wait. Okay, I'll fix that. But let's not keep you waiting, guys. Guys, do you want me?
Okay,
Yeah.
so can you put the return false? Can you go back to the code? 19, right? Should that be outside the for loop?
Okay, sorry. That's why.
Or would it work the same?
Yeah. That's why the bracket issue is coming. It's always returning false. Thanks, Navan.
I'm gonna just see if that works.
No, that would work, I guess. It's returning false, right? If I write here and now, it's returning true. Yeah. It's invalid, no? Oh, now this should work, guys. When I'm writing Iron Man, or what is the expected, guys? Will it show error? Sorry, I mean to say alert message, or it would console log the data. It's returning. It's a valid. It's an invalid name, right? So it's returning true. So it's an invalid name. If we are getting an invalid name, yes. If we are getting an invalid name, we would say that console log. And if we are getting valid name, so yeah, that would do, right? So is invalid name, when I'm passing Iron Man, it's returning that it's invalid or not. Iron Man is an invalid name. So it's returning it's returning true. If it is true, it should alert us, right?
Alicia, sorry to interrupt. Can you just rename that variable? Seems to be missing. So one is it's returning is invalid name, right?
Yes, is invalid. Okay, so invalid name. Kind of confusing. Isn't. Oh, okay, sorry. This is not logic. Is invalid. No. Right. So this is an invalid name. So this is an invalid name. So it's saying that, okay, not available yet. But if I write anything other than English, it's consoling, right? It's not going into that. So essentially what we would do, I'm printing it not many times, that's why. So if it's not invalid, we would like to send a request. Yeah. Cool. So this should submit the data, right? Because it's not an invalid. Cool. So this is the response that we get from the endpoint. I hope it's clear with this. Sorry for causing the trouble for this other thing, right? So let me quickly share the takeaways. So from the second part, what are the different ways in which we could validate using inside that HTML? Inside that HTML itself, right? We can make that HTML input required if we want it to be compulsory. We are not adding any JS code to make that happen. We just need to add this attribute required inside our input field, in which in this case we did for this email, right? Okay, we have done is for full name. So full name would always be entered. Similarly, we can make anything disabled. It can be a button. It can be an input field as well. Similarly, for JS validation with events, what we could have done, we could have added focus. Like if we want to check if whatever the user is writing, we could trigger it using focus. Similarly for blur as well. And here we did with the submit, right? Like whenever the user is submitting, it will check. So we have added this event handler for submit, that whenever we would submit the data entered by the user, it would check if the name is valid or not. If it's invalid, then it would show an alert message, or else it would make the API call, right? It would send the data to this endpoint. So that we did. Sure.
Risha, I guess we can wrap it up there.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah.
Let's share the feedback.
Okay, yeah. So we have like one small part which is being left out. It will take me around like 30 minutes, but I don't want to stretch it for today. We can have another session, which we can do it for Thursday. And it will take like hardly 30 minutes, guys. So please, I would highly suggest you to join in that day as well. Sorry for stretching it too long. It's a very small topic to cover. Let me share you this feedback form which you can write, which you can fill in. I'm really sorry for this inconvenience caused due to this internet issues as well as this error that happened. But yeah, I'll make sure it does not happen next time. But yeah, please fill in this feedback form. We'll have another session, very quick session. It will take around 30 to 40 minutes at max. I'll try to give you an overall summary of these last 3 sessions, because these last 3 sessions would have collectively been one session, but I focus more on the activities. So yes, sorry for that, guys. Please, we'll join in for 30 minutes quick call this coming Thursday. Guys, if you don't have in this session, it's okay, right, Nabil? We can quit like after.
Just in case anyone have queries, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If you have queries, please fill in the statement. Exactly. Also, if you have like queries outside this, please feel free to ping in the group in which Slack is. If you have some queries, you can also discuss this with me. Okay, Shantanu, tell me what happened.
Yeah, it's related to the platform. I was facing in the evening. It's related to the platform, like
Trios platform.
Yeah, Qtrip dynamic.
Okay, what was the issue?
Should I share the screen?
Okay.
1 minute.
Can you share your screen?
1 minute.
Sure.
So yeah, this is it. I did everything, run the backend, npm install, npm start, and then even in the index one I updated the current IP, mean the workspace URL, and when I click on go live, it shows port 8084. So
okay, please go live for that index.html frontend. Frontend index.html.
Sorry to interrupt, just a second, right? So, Shantanu, can you just click on the podcast thing once more? Just go to the live server, right? Just click that.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, same only. So, can you can see a folder called __trio, right? First folder on the left side.
I'm not able to listen. 1 minute.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm switching off. Hello, now. Okay.
Yeah. So, first thing, you can click on the podcast thing once more just to close the live server to start with. on the
Okay.
bottom right, you can see.
Okay.
And go to File Explorer. You can see first folder is __ prio. Second folder is VS Code, right? Click on VS Code. Yeah, open that settings.json. Just update the 8084 to 8081. Yeah, can you try starting live server level? Just see if it's accessible. And just the general thing, right? So do check out probably most of these platform things. You'll get help from help desk. If you search for, not ask, you don't even need to ask for. Then just search for in help desk. We will have wikis for most of the platforms. So you can search something like, let's say, live server not working or something like that. You should be able to get a step by step into debug. So, but here you got the issue, right? How to figure that out.
Okay.
Any more queries, guys? Oh, thanks, Mama, for jumping.
Hey, quick check. We can do that, and again, probably just quick check. Did you get to see that video on how to do share your screen, right? Get started. We'll check that. Just want to see if you get to see that video on how to resolve merge conflict. Did that help? Or that still didn't?
Actually, I was trying, but I couldn't. The options I'm not getting.
Sure. To do share. Yeah. You would have cloned, right? You were saying you had merge conflicts.
Sorry?
You would have cloned already, right? Was the issue you were having merge conflicts?
Yeah, like the options. I'll just show the terminals.
Sure. Yeah, can you do one thing? Can you click on the top left? Just open the Qt Dynamic folder. No, sorry. The usual way you do, right? You can see that 3 horizontal arrows just below the Qt Dynamic button. You just click. Right?
Sorry, 1 second. Yeah. You want me to open Qt Dynamic?
Yeah. Open Qt Dynamic. You would have already pulled it, so that's why it's showing the error. Yeah, here on that should be fine. So can you do a git status? Just open your terminal, do a git status.
What's the letter?
Git status.
Yeah, I'll probably type it.
That's small.
I'll type out. Yeah. So whatever Alisha shared, it's in small letters, right? Everything in small letters. You can check out the Zoom chat.
Small GIT status. Yeah. Small GIT. Yeah. Space status. STATUS.
Yeah. So this essentially says if you like expand a bit more, can you expand the terminal a bit more? Just give it some more space. You can drag, or you can scroll up, whatever. Both. You can take that arrow button. Yeah. So this essentially says the fourth line says you have some conflicts, right? Just like you mentioned, you have some merge conflicts. Now you can see that there are some files, right? So what you can do to quickly see which are the files that issues are. On the left side, you can see that you have File Explorer open now, right? That is the second button. Can you go to the fourth button after search? Yeah, please click on it. So here the first 2 sections, right? You can see 2 files in the section. Yeah, click on each of those. Yeah, you can start with one. So you have some merge conflicts, right? So in general, let's say how should you select an option, right? So if you have some code that you have written, let's say in module 1, right? So you're currently in module 2, I'm guessing. So if you had some code written in module 1, then you should use accept current change if the other thing is empty. So here both are empty, so you do not worry about anything. You can just select one of those, accept current change, or you get the point, right? So here current and income change are more or less empty lines, so you can select any of those. Should be fine. So here more or less we are trying to any should be fine. You can click on that. Yeah. You scroll down, see if you have more. No, same file only. Scroll down within the file. See if you have any more such callouts. Right? That seems to be good, right? Yeah. You can move to the next thing. Next file now. Same thing. What do you think the first thing? Should you select current change, incoming, or you can select any of those?
Like both chains, I can select this one.
Yeah, it's both are empty, right? So you can select any of those, or even both. Any should work. Yeah, you can click on accept. So next thing, if you check, can you scroll down? So here says the current change you have a file, the incoming change you have a file, right? So was this bootstrap link you added? No, right? It was already there when you started module 1, right?
Yes.
So you can select accept incoming changes. Any line of code you have added, you can select incoming changes mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, next thing. Same thing, you were working on, let's say, HTML Qt dynamic, right? So you can select accept incoming for all the HTML updates. So you can select accept incoming. Yeah. Same thing. You can. So the criteria is if you have added some code, you shouldn't use that code. So there you should select accept current change. Here that you remember you having tested HTML, right? So you can select accept incoming for all the HTML merge conflicts.
Okay.
But you get the reasoning there, right? Why are we selecting accept incoming here?
Testing incoming, no? Hello?
Yeah. Is it audible?
Yeah, audible. Here also Alicia the same.
Yeah, so just think of in general, right? So don't click on it. So what I'm saying was any line of code you remember you haven't added, right? You haven't touched or you haven't made any change. You can go forward with selecting accept incoming change. Let's say you had some line of code, let's say added in landing page, right? So if you had some conflict in landing page where you added something in module 1, then be a bit let's say cautious. Ensure this particular whatever this is showing doesn't include the lines you added. If it includes the let's say the highlighted part, right? If the highlighted parts under current change include the line you added, that time you need to select accept current change. All other times you can go with accept incoming.
Okay, like wherever I have made the change that
wherever you have made the change, you shouldn't lose that code, right? So there you need to select accept current change so that you don't lose your code you added. But any code, piece of code, test files, package.json, these are the files we don't expect you to update, right? And here in this specific case, you don't update the HTML files, so you can go with accept incoming change.
Yeah. So only those two.
Yeah. That also you can select accept incoming.
Yeah, these are the steps already posted.
Yeah. Now what you should so essentially you had two files. So you can see we opened two files that was under the merge changes section, right?
Yes.
So we resolved all the merge conflicts. Now we need to let's say update the changes. You can click on that plus button right to merge changes. When you hover on merge changes thing, right? You can see a plus button on the right? You can select. Yeah, that just saves the changes. You can click on that. Yeah. And on the top you can see a let's say tick button, right? On the top. Yeah. Now select that to say, let's say save the entire merge conflict. Yeah, you can click on that. Now do a git status, see if those errors show right, just to verify. Is right? It doesn't show any files like you had earlier, right?
Yeah, it's given. Yeah, okay.
This is usually what you'll have to do. Probably every time you pull stuff, you may not have this much files. But let's say you pull for module 3, probably you'll get some more files, right? So if it conflicts with whatever you already have, be conscious. Don't lose any of your files, right? So there you need to select accept incoming. If it's, let's say, test files you haven't updated, all those things, you can, let's say, go on and select accept incoming. So it's more like it is asking us if you want to keep your code or whatever is coming from the GitLab server, right?
Okay. Thank you so much.
I guess you should be able to get started with Query Dynamic module 2.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone have any other doubt, please? Yes, we're almost done.
Yeah,
Almost done.
Alicia, I guess we end the call.
Yeah, we can. Thank you guys for joining in. We'll see each other in the session. Thank you.
Recording stop.